Good evening. This is BelGeode, and we are back with some more Microsoft Flight Simulator. And tonight, folks, I'm going to show you my absolute favorite World War II warbird. Finally, we have it, the Milviz Fg1d Corsair, which is, of course, Goodyear's variant of the Chance Vought F4U Corsair that served admirably in both World War II as well as the Korean War. This bird is the one that I was waiting for. Out of all the Milviz birds that are coming, and believe me, I'm probably going to buy all of them, this is the one that I was hoping that they would bring into the sim, and I am so glad that I finally got this thing. It is nothing short of amazing. There's very few things that I can find to complain about. I'll go over all of that once we actually get into the cockpit and we're flying around, and I'll give you, kind of an idea of some of the things that I think are not all that great. But there's not going to be a very long list, we'll put it that way. Probably the only thing that I can really possibly complain about is something that I know a lot of folks have been complaining about, and that is the price. The price is a little bit higher, and I realize it's Milviz. Milviz has a very big name, so yeah, they can pretty much charge whatever they want. However, I'm starting to notice this trend throughout a lot of developers that are bringing stuff to Microsoft Flight Simulator. And this is probably going to be something that I'll be talking about with my learned companions, NovaWing24 and Mr. Heli Simmer himself, Sergio, on 3 Grumpy Simmers, as soon as we get around to recording it. But yeah, we have noticed that the prices are starting to creep up there, and I'm not quite sure what's going on with that, but I think that it's something that developers need to think about. Let's not try to price out the hobby, so to speak. Let's try to keep it reasonable for folks. I realize there's a lot of work that you put into this, but still, there's got to be a happy medium here somewhere, or at least have some more sales. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the Corsair, and we'll get started with our flight. So this is, of course, the Corsair, and it comes with a ton of liveries. Look at that. That's all the liveries that you get. And a number of these are actually from VMF 214, which is, of course, the infamous Black Sheep Squadron led by Major Gregory Boyington, call sign Pappy. So yeah, we're going to be using number 475 here, and we're going to be flying that around the Solomon Islands. But yeah, you get all of this stuff here. Now, one quick note that I just want to mention on the weight and balance page, you will notice that there are a lot of options for fuel. My suggestion, if you do not want to have drop tanks, is put this all the way to 0. Put this all the way to 0. That'll get rid of your side drop tanks. And if you want to get rid of the center one, put that one to 0 as well. To compensate for it, make sure that you get your reserve tanks to full and your main tanks to full. Without that, it's going to be a short flight for you. Also, the center of gravity on the right-hand side, you'll notice, is out of whack. So you're going to want to pull that to the left. It's currently set to 36. Milviz recommends that you keep it roughly around 30-ish. And now it's going to play with me here. See? Why won't you work with me? There we go. So yeah, make sure that your center of gravity is right around there. And you really shouldn't have too many problems with this bird. All right. Now, before we get to our flight plan, which is a nice, easy flight plan here, I want to show you something new. And this is, of course, new to me, but I do feel like I need to call it out here. So we're going to go to options, we're going to go to controls, and as everything pops up, you'll notice keyboard, mouse, and then all of a sudden you'll see something that says right VPC stick warbird. Oh no, what is that? And if we go further to the right, you'll see something that says VPC throttle MT50CM3, which is a mouthful. What is all of this, you ask? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Verpil HOTAS system, and I'm going to be flashing some screenshots that I took with my phone on your screen right now, just to kind of show you what I got. The quick and dirty story of this, I was gifted this. For those of you who remember me from DCS World, in particular the campaign Raven 1, Baltic Dragon decided the best way to repay me for all the extensive voiceover work that I've done for that campaign and for future work that he's doing was to actually go out and purchase me a Virpil HOTAS system. And I want you to pay especially close attention to the stick that you're seeing right now, because, yeah, you know that he bought this for me. That is the Tomcat replica stick. And oh my God, folks, it's every bit as good as I thought it would be. I've been flying it around with DCS, with the Tomcat, of course. Everything just matches up perfectly. For MSFS, since of course there is no combat, some of the buttons are not getting any use. For example, the actual armament buttons for the guns and the missiles and so on, I really don't use that in MSFS. But suffice to say, if you take a look at my joystick binds here, you'll see that I've got quite a lot bound to this thing. This thing has like 80 plus buttons that you can logically bind to different functions in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that's just on the throttle. The stick, of course, considerably less to choose from, but as you can see, I've pretty much fleshed that out as well too. So yeah, awesome. I don't want this to become an infomercial for Virpil, but I will say this. If you are in the market for a really high-end HOTAS system to fly your warbirds and so on, or your modern-day fighters, definitely give Virpil a shot. I know a lot of the time their stuff is on back order and you have to wait like somewhat around a region of 6 weeks or so before they even take your money and ship to you. But trust me, folks, it is so worth it in the end. Highly, highly recommended. All right, let's get on to our flight plan really quick and then we'll hop in a cockpit. So as I zoom into Mother Earth, you will notice that we're heading to the Solomon Islands, which is appropriate for this particular bird because Vela La Vela Island, which should be in the center of your screen right now, is one of the places that the Black Sheep Squadron were based. And we're going to be taking off from Barakoma Airport, or airbase, I should say, which is an add-on airport. You will see the links to that in the video description below. I highly recommend that if you're interested in flying in this area, pick that one up. Be sure to give a very good review to the person who made it, because they really put some heart and soul into this thing. There's a couple of things that are missing, but overall, I would say it was a really good rendition of that airport. So from Barakoma, we're going to be taking off and flying southeast, and we're going to head to a default airport. This is Gizo, and Gizo was so chosen because that's literally the only thing on that island. I'm not kidding. You'll see it when we're flying towards it. There is just the airport and water on all sides. So we're going to attempt to do a touch and go in Gizo. And that's going to be real interesting in a Corsair because it is notorious when it comes to takeoff and landing. So we'll see if we can pull that off. So once we do that, we're going to head back to Barakoma. And along the way, we'll do some cloud surfing and some shenanigans because, of course, it's me. You come to expect that from me. So without further ado, we're going to hop in. I have the weather set today to scattered clouds. So we're going to be flying in the afternoon. I don't know why it just switched itself to morning, but we actually want it to be closer to 4 p.m. We'll push it back to about 3-ish. There we go. 3:40 should be fine. All right, so that should make for some interesting scenery. So let's go ahead and hop into the mighty Corsair, and we will see just how much raw power that beautiful Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine really has. All right. Yes, we are in the mighty Corsair. And I gotta say, out of all the Milviz aircraft that I have owned over the years, this one remains my all time favorite. Of course, it should be no surprise to those of you who know me because, well, the Corsair is my all time World War II favorite bird. So, yeah, when I heard that Milviz was coming out with this, first off, I thought it was like somebody just doing a port over. Boy, am I glad that I was wrong. And it turned out that it was actually Milviz doing it themselves. And holy crap, did they do it justice. Wow. All I can say, wow. So you may have noticed the island that we are on is in the Solomon Islands. This is Barakoma Air Base, which is one of the few air bases that the Black Sheep Squadron, among some other squadrons in the Marines, were based in World War II. Now, of course, the Black Sheep Squadron's famous because of Major Gregory Pappy Boyington and, of course, his group of misfits that were immortalized on TV, even though that was pretty much Hollywood fiction. Even Major Boyington himself said that it was loosely based on the real people. So, yeah, take it for what it was. It's still one of my childhood favorites. I remember watching every episode back in the 70s, and I'll probably search for it online, see if I can watch the episodes again because it was just so much fun, even if it isn't really a true depiction of the squadron. But Milviz has done their liveries justice. This is one of the many liveries that you get with this Corsair, and this one is, of course, part of VMF 214. I believe the registration number on this one is 475. I forget exactly where it is. We'll see it in the outside view in a little bit there. But for the purposes of ATC, we're going to be calling ourselves Black Sheep 475. All right, so let's take a quick look around the cockpit here. And you can see everything is meticulously modeled. Of course, this being MSFS, not everything can work. For example, there's no weapons, period. So, yeah, that is a thing. We do have a gun sight, which I've already taken the liberty of turning the gun sight light on. We'll see that on the little reflector glass there once I get everything started up. But yeah, overall, they did a tremendous job duplicating the Corsair in Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is pretty much exactly how I remember it back in P3D, but obviously they went the extra mile to add like the PBR and so on and so forth to it to really make it stand out in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I got to give props to Milviz on that one. It looks every bit as lived in. The only thing that I feel is a little bit odd, and I don't know, maybe it's just me because I've never actually been in a real one of these aircraft, the cockpit does feel a little too big to me. I don't know. Like I said, I've never been in a real Corsair, so I have no idea just how well my 6 foot body would fit inside of this thing. But it does kind of feel like I'm a little high up, and it does kind of feel like I've got an awful lot of arm room or elbow room here in this thing. But if that's like the worst thing that I can complain about with this thing, then we're doing good. We're doing really good. All right, so here we are on Barakoma, and we're going to be flying from Vela La Vela. We'll just kind of fly around. We'll do some cloud dodging or cloud surfing if you prefer. We'll head over to like Munda and Gizo. We might try to land at Gizo. Gizo's interesting because it's literally just an airport on an island, and it is actually default. This particular airport, however, is not default. The link is going to be popping up right below, indicating to you where you can find this freeware airport. I forget the name of the person who made it, but that will also be in the pop-up that you're seeing right now. And I would highly recommend, if you're looking for a place to fly the Corsair, this is the airport to get. I have noticed some other airports from other folks on that flightsim.to site, and I did get them as well. However, this one really struck me as the closest to what this airport would have looked like back in 1943. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a picture right now. Okay, so as you can see from the picture that I just showed you, they did a really good job modeling this airbase. There are some things that obviously are missing, like, static Corsairs or static Hellcats and so on and so forth, and maybe a few Quonset huts or something of the like. But considering the fact that it was pretty much made with what I am assuming are mostly default scenery objects, I would say that they did a pretty good job, especially considering it's freeware. All right, but let's go ahead and get flying because I have waffled on enough here, as my friend Mr. NovaWing24 would say. So let's get our battery on. Okay, and now that that's on, let's also get our instruments, aka avionics, and we'll turn our master radio on. This is also needed for the radio. I don't believe this switch really does anything, but I like turning it on anyway, and then I usually set this to both. So that should be it for the radios. Everything should be fine there. Let's get our lights on. We're going to set our beacon to flash, as well as our recognition lights to steady. And this, of course, will turn the recognition lights on. Landing light is back here. We'll deal with that in a moment. You'll notice I've got the cover currently raised for the starter switch. The cover for the generator switch is closed because by default, that switch is always on. I mean, if you lift up the cover, you will see that it turns it off. When you close it down, it turns it on. So pretty cool stuff there. All right. So now that we've got our battery on, we're going to need some fuel. Now with this aircraft, you're going to want to start with the reserve tanks. So right there. Now, since the reserve tanks don't hold as much fuel as the main tanks, which are pretty much in front of us right there, once you take off, you're going to want to switch it pretty quickly to the main tanks and then keep it on the main tanks for pretty much the duration of your flight. If you've got enough reserve fuel left, you can always switch it back to reserve when you're coming in for a landing, but I know that I filled the tanks on this one. And now I'm going to start getting paranoid here, and I'll have to check to make sure. But I'm pretty sure that we've got enough gas for our little flight around here. All right, so that's on. Next order of business, our mixture. We're going to put that all the way up to full, which is, of course, rich. Typically, with the Corsair, you want to set it to like auto rich, but auto rich is really not something that is modeled in Microsoft Flight Simulator, so full rich should be fine. While we have that done, I should probably get the fuel pump going for a few seconds. We're going to watch this gauge right here. So fuel pump. It's kind of like priming the engine, but I don't really need to use the primer because I've been flying this thing around all afternoon. So we're not worried about there not being enough fuel. However, let's make sure that our cowl flaps are open all the way. If you just put this forward, it will open up fully and then it will put itself back in its center position. So there we go. You can see the cowl flaps are completely open. And we should close our intercooler flap for now. Intercoolers are underneath. We will open those back up once we're getting ready to take off. But for now, we will keep them closed. All right, and that, I believe, is everything we need for that. So the only other thing that I'm going to want to do is turn on our magnetos. Okay, so we've got both on, and we'll hit the starter, clear prop. Beautiful, beautiful. When I say that Milviz did a dang good job on the sounds, I'm sure they probably had help with like Sim Acoustics or somebody like that, but holy crap, this thing sounds every bit the throaty double wasp engine that this aircraft is known to have. This was the biggest engine at the time for a single place warbird, a fighter. All right, now that we've got it started, you can see sunset is rapidly upon us, so let's go ahead and get the wings unfolded. There's two steps to unfolding the wings. First, you have to unlock them. and then you hit this little lever there, and you'll notice they come down. Now, on the wings themselves, they're little hinge flaps. You'll notice the one there. For some strange reason, the one on the port side wing does not work. So Milviz, if you're watching that, you may want to check that little hinge flap there and see if you can get that to work the same way it does on the starboard side. But those little hinge flaps come up so that the wing can fold properly. All right, and now that we have that set, let's get our flaps. So 10, 20, 30, that should be takeoff flaps. And of course, they take forever to come down. Let's go to 40 and 50. Just confirm. That's our landing flaps. We want to make sure it goes through the full motions there, and then we'll put it back up to 30. There we go. All right, looking good, looking good. Let's do our controls wipeout really quick. So left aileron, right aileron. Left aileron, right aileron. Elevator. Can I even see the elevators? Oh yeah, big old elevators back there. Of course, my head is all jittery and stuff, so hopefully motion smoothing will fix that. And of course, the rudder, left, right, left, right. Rudder is of course attached to the tail wheel. This is a tail dragger, just like most World War II planes. So that is something that you do need to consider whenever you're taxiing this thing around. Because of this massive engine in the front, there's a lot of torque, and it does tend to pull to one side, most notably the left. So one of the things that you can do to help compensate for that is going to be trim. And actually, that's a really important point. With this aircraft, you want to make sure your trim settings, which you can notice right here, are set properly. So rudder trim should be 6 degrees to the right. This is aileron trim, this is rudder trim, and this is elevator trim. Aileron trim should also be 6 degrees to the right. So there we go. We got that at 1. We can slide that over. It does take a little bit of doing to get there. Wait till it changes to 6, pull it back to 5, and then pull it back to 6. Right there is where you want it. Same thing with the rudder trim. If we back it off, you'll see it says 5, and now it's back to 6. And that's where you want your rudder trim for takeoff. For the pitch, we're going to want that at 1 degree nose up, which we've got this handy little slider marker here, so you can see exactly where that is. Now, generally, I have noticed that this thing does have a bit of a nose down tendency, and I think that may be something to do with the sim itself. So I just kind of bump it up to where it barely says 2 degrees nose up. But that should be fine. That should be fine. All right, everything else is set. We've got our tail wheel lock, which we will use when we're getting ready to take off. And let me just check through everything here. Landing gear, yes, we're showing 3 gear down. So that is perfect. Flaps are in the right spot. Hopefully it's not going to get too dark before I land, so we may not need to worry about all the cockpit lights, which are all these rheostats that you're seeing here, and the switch to the left. All right, but I would say we're pretty much ready to taxi. So there's 2 ways we could do this. We could either do it the easy way or the hard way. For this time around, I'm going to do it the easy way. The hard way would be staying in the cockpit, doing S turns, and then doing a number like this each time we make an S turn. That's going to get old for you as a viewer really fast. So we're going to do it the easy way by going to the outside view and just taxiing to the runway. It's really not that far off. Okay, so we are on runway 14, and I just realized I never actually contacted the tower to clear my taxi. So let's do that real quick here. Let's see, we want ground, and we're going to request departing straight out.
Ground request taxi for takeoff straight out departure.
Taxi to Nicole, short of runway 14 using taxiway. Contact tower on 135.175 when ready.
All right, well, we're already here, so we're just going to call for
Taxi to
takeoff
short
clearance.
Runway 14 using taxiway. Tower ready for straight out departure at runway 14. Hold short runway 14. Traffic is on the runway.
What are you talking about? Traffic is on the runway.
Hold short runway 14.
I am the traffic on the runway. I don't see anybody else here. That's kind of weird. Oh, I just noticed something. Look at that. Huh. Well, that's a bug. Hey, Milviz, you see this, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're good to go there as far as I'm concerned. Let's go ahead and get our intercooler flaps open, as well as our oil cooler flaps. That'll avoid any nasty occurrences on takeoff. We'll also check our temperatures while we're at it here and our pressure. And we are going to want to close the cowl flaps slightly. They say about 2/3, so roughly around 60-something%. We'll confirm. Yeah, looks good enough for me. All right, flaps are already in takeoff mode. And we're going to want to switch our tank to the main tank. And then the last thing we will definitely want to do is lock the tail wheel. Because without that, all hell's going to break loose on takeoff. Speaking of which, it is about time, so you know what I am about to do. Brakes down, throttles up. Now you got to be really careful with the manifold pressure on this thing. If you keep it too high for too long, you will blow something and have oil all over your front canopy glass. Alright, so right about there is good. And let's do this thing. Brakes off. Let's give it some full power here. Keep it right around 50. We should start lifting up soon. There we go. Oh, did he just clear me for departure now? Oh yeah, sure, we're on our way, buddy. Okay, so we're out of here. Let's get our gear up. Gear's coming up. While that's happening, let's get our flaps up. So 20, 10, and 1. And of course, we're going to need to trim out because now we're starting to pull to the right. Let's get our manifold pressure back down before we blow something up. And we'll start working on the trim. Aileron trim is what I'm going to adjust here. So we get that back in the center. And this thing has a tendency of going nose high, so we'll also adjust our elevator trim. And that way we can gain some more airspeed. And it is rather loud out there, so let me go ahead and close our canopy while I'm at it. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so there is the tip of Vela La Vela. And let's take a better look at this airport here by making a left-hand turn. Kind of do a pattern here really quick. Then we'll just check out the airport. One thing about the Corsair, because of course it's got that big, huge bulkhead in the back, you really don't have a lot of rearward visibility. You also don't have a lot of upper visibility.
You are leaving my airspace frequency change approved.
Oh, thank you. Acknowledged. Well, we'll be back though. Alright, so let's check out the work done on Barakoma here on Vela La Vela Island. Now, if you recall the picture that I showed you earlier, you should know that this is pretty accurate actually. Let's get our manifold pressure back down. We'll put it down to about 25. There we go. And there we can get a really good look at the airport that we just departed from. You can see the base on the far right side. That's pretty cool. So well done. Well done. For freeware, even better. I would love to see pretty much all of the Solomon Islands be taken over with air bases such as this in a World War II style. That would be the perfect playground in our modern day flight sim for us to fly birds like the Corsair and some of the other upcoming ones, for example, the P-40. And I'm pretty sure that probably Flying Iron Simulations may bring over their P-47 and P-38. So lots of good stuff to look forward to. Of course, it probably doesn't match very well with things like the Spitfire, but, you know, I'm sure that somebody can do up some air bases for the European theater. Pacific theater, I know, gets a lot of neglect, and especially in this flight sim, a lot of the default airports here are really nothing to write home about. So to me, that's a blank canvas for any scenery developer, whether freeware or payware, that wants to come up with something themed for this area, especially the Solomon Islands and, of course, Papua New Guinea, New Britain, New Caledonia, all of those areas. So there you go. I'm throwing that out there to the community. See what you can do with it, please. All right, let's go to the outside view and do some cloud hopping as we head south. Well, close enough to south. I'm telling you folks, this right here is what it's all about. I know that a lot of people are looking forward to companies like PMDG bringing over their airliners and so on and so forth. And I know a good amount of community members are looking forward to helicopters and whatnot. Me, this is where it's at right here. Flying warbirds such as this one, or even flying modern day fighters. That is the kind of stuff that I really enjoy. Despite the fact that there is no combat whatsoever in Microsoft Flight Simulator, if you treat it as pretty much like an airshow aircraft, and I have seen this aircraft at air shows, that to me is reason enough to want to fly something like this. And I know that there are a number of companies that are coming out with other warbirds or variants on warbirds that are already out. And I look forward to snapping up each and every one of them. I'm just that much excited about how much gameplay, I guess you would say, that warbirds bring to the table for me personally. All right, this sun is going to get in my eye though. Holy crap. Woo! I know it's supposed to be realistic and everything, but I'm going to have to like put my head up here just to prevent myself from getting flashed. Although, one thing I could do is I could take it to the deck. So let's do that really quick here. Look at that. This is, of course, one of the presets. I am not using live weather. I'm actually using a preset that I have made for this particular neck of the woods with the prevailing winds favoring 140, bearing 140. And, of course, all these scattered clouds at many different heights. It's just perfect for the kind of flying that I love to do. All right, I think Gizo Airport should be around here somewhere. So let me do a quick scan as we're bringing her down. I want to say that might be it, close to where the gun sight is right now. Of course, we are still way up there. Yeah, we're at about 5,500 feet. So this may actually give me an opportunity to show you one of the things that the Corsair was in fact famous for. So let's get some airspeed going here. We'll put it up to about 40 on a manifold pressure. Want to try and get above 200 here. And one of the nicknames that this aircraft got was the Whistling Death. The Japanese called it that because of the sound that it made when it was diving to dive bomb them. So let's see if we can pretty much pick a neat little spot here, and we're going to do a mock dive bombing run. I think that peninsula looks just about right, and we're at 200 now, so I'm going to drop our power back, dip the nose down. We're going to go to the outside view for this, but I'm going to pull out the speed brakes and take a look at what happens with the landing gear handles. And now we'll go outside and listen. Did you hear that weird sounding whistle that came out? That is why they call this thing Whistling Death. It is so cool that they were able to model that audio, because that is pretty much one of the trademarks of the Corsair. Of course, another infamous nickname that the Corsair got was the Ensign Eliminator, and part of the reason for that was because of just how squirrely this thing can be on both takeoffs and landings. If you were a Nugget Navy pilot or a Marine Corps pilot and you did not have your act together, this thing would make a widow out of your wife, assuming, of course, you had one. But yeah, Such an awesome, incredible bird, and I'm glad that they pretty much nailed the flight model on this thing. All right, so Gizo is up ahead, and I am sorely tempted to try and see if I can land and then turn around and take off and go head back to Barakoma. However, this runway is extremely narrow, so if I do not make it, well, yeah, it's been nice knowing you. All right, but we're going to attempt it, though. So let's slow down, first of all. We are at 160, so we're just about where I can lower the gear and the flaps. I'm going to go on upwind here. So there we go. We've got our eyes on Gizo. Yeah, this is going to get real interesting. Now, I'm actually going to keep the aileron centered. I'm not going to put it at 6 degrees right aileron. Kind of want to see outside, though, so let me open up the canopy here. It's going to get loud. Okay, there's our airport. So we're going to make a left-hand turn to base, and then we'll bring her in. In the meantime, let's go ahead and drop our gear. Notice it goes down the left channel this time. All right, everything looks good there, and let's get our flaps down. There we go, we're at takeoff flaps, and we are just over 1,000, so let's see if we can lose some altitude and some airspeed here. We want to keep it roughly around 100, is that knots? Yeah, 100 knots. I know that the original was measured in miles per hour. It is important to note that this particular Corsair that Milviz has given us was manufactured by Goodyear. It was not the original one manufactured by Chance Vought. Chance Vought basically licensed it out to Goodyear because there was such a rush needed on this bird during World War II, and Chance Vought could not actually handle all of the orders that the military had. So they were able to, wrong button, where was I? They were able to basically subcontract out to Goodyear and I believe another company, but I forget the name of the company. It'll pop up at the bottom there. And that pretty much allowed Goodyear to build this bird as the Fg1d. So if you're looking for it online to purchase, you're not going to be looking for F4U Corsair. You're going to be looking for Fg1d. And we're getting close to stall here, so I need to give it some power. Let's put the manifold pressure up to about 40. And yeah, this is going to be fun. We're going to do this the easy way this time. We're going to go to the outside view. Alright, so that was a good takeoff there, a little touch and go action for you. I didn't want to get too committed to landing there because that is also a very short airstrip. I really don't feel like going for a swim today. So let's put our manifold pressure back down. We'll close the canopy once more. And we're going to slowly but surely work our way back home. Now, I was going to head over to Munda. Munda is over there somewhere, but to be honest with you, there's really nothing to show. Nobody has done any add-on airport for Munda yet. And the default is pretty much just a grass strip. It doesn't look anything like it would have looked in World War II. So there's kind of no point to my even showing that to you. Let me trim us down here a bit. There we go. So we're just going to work our way back to Barakoma. We'll continue flying amongst the clouds here, and then we'll bring her in for a landing, and we can call this video done. Now, at this point in time, I will have some quick facts popping up on your screen right now. I don't count on my memory anymore to remember all of the hard facts, so that's why you're seeing this. I'll try to keep my head somewhat steady so that you can actually read what's going on the screen right now. All right, and let's go back to the outside view for a little here, and we'll do some more cloud busting. All right, folks, what say you? I think we've had enough shenanigans for the day, and I don't see any Japanese zeros in the sky, so there's really nothing to shoot. So it doesn't look like I'm going to beat Pappy Boyington's record of 28 Japanese aircraft. That's a combined total, by the way, between his work that he did here, as well as his work that he did with the AVN. I think it's the AVN, maybe it's the AVG, or I'm thinking antivirus. The Flying Tigers, let's put it that way. All right, but right down there, we should be seeing Barakoma come into view, so we're going to need to get into the pattern. We're all the way up at 6,000 feet. An interesting little tidbit about this aircraft, if you do get over 10,000 feet, you will see from the outside view the pilot put on his oxygen mask, which I thought was a nice little touch there. Of course, I don't believe hypoxia is modeled in this sim, so that's currently not really an issue if you should happen to go a little too high. But one thing you will want to do is you will want to utilize that supercharger, which kind of works as water injection in this bird. So that'll help you maintain your power and cruise while you're at those higher altitudes. All right, this is our downwind here. I suppose we should probably call them and tell them we're heading in. Nah, we'll just surprise them. I like surprising them. All right, let me check our trim. Okay, we're still a little bit low, but that's all right. I have the power down considerably here. So we're at 3,000. And 200 knots. Woo! All right, I'm going to let go of the stick here. It's going to rise, and of course, our horsepower is going to go down. We've got 2,000 horsepower in this puppy. You can see that big hose nose in the front is starting to fall. There we go, 120. All right, we're a little high up for the gear, but I am going to do basically a run and brake. So we're going to loop around here. We'll take it down a little bit further, and then we'll come in for a landing. We'll try to keep our speed within the yellow arc, so that way we'll be nice and safe. And as you can see, we've got a nice wide runway there, so we should be able to pull this off. I hope. I really hope. There's been one too many times where I have run off the runway with this thing because I forgot my tail wheel was locked. Don't let that be you. All right, we are at 2,000. I'm going to start trimming us up a little here. We'll set it to 0 for now. That'll get our speed back down. Throttle is still pretty much at idle. So even though we're rising up, we are dropping a lot of airspeed. That'll come down momentarily. You can see some of the back roads there at Barakoma. And now that our nose is falling, let's go ahead and get the gear down. And we'll get our flaps down as well. We'll start with 30 degrees flaps as we make our turn to downwind. We'll try to do this similar to a carrier brake here. So we're going to need to get down to about 800 feet. We're falling at a rate of 2,000 feet per minute, so I'm actually going to trim us up just a touch more. Set it back to 1 degree nose up. And we'll just bring her around. Because of the big hose nose in the way, of course, you want to make sure that your turn to final is pretty tight. So you definitely don't want to be too high. If you overshoot, you're going to run out of real estate really quickly with this thing. All right, but we are pretty much on reciprocal, as you can see there on my little compass. I guess that's a directional indicator. And let's get that extra couple of notches of flaps there. So we're at 50. That should pop the nose up just a little here. And we're also going to need some power so we don't go in a drink. All right, we are at 600, close to 500 feet. Okay, we are off course a little bit here, so let me pull us out to the right. Something interesting I noticed about this scenery, I think that's a B-3 Orion in the water. I don't recall those being there in World War II. Oh well, it is what it is. Alright, now it is time for our turn, the final, so wish me luck, folks. Here we go. Landing light should still be... Oh, I never turned it on. Okay, well, you know what? I don't have time to turn it on right now. So we'll have to live with it. Just keep dropping her down a bit here. Do a quick check from the underside, make sure everything's kosher. Yep, looks good. Back inside, and let's bring her in. We should be getting really close to stall speed, which is about 80 knots in this bird with full flaps. So we'll make sure we're nice and lined up. Looking good. Feeling good. Pulling back the power. There's a stall warning, and completely at idle. Believe it or not, we already landed. It didn't even feel it, did you? That's pretty cool. Thankfully, we are on a runway that is pretty much coral, so we should stop in short order before we run out of runway there. But one thing I am going to do is unlock the tail wheel, so that way I can nudge her a little to the right there. And we'll start hitting the brakes. Be careful with the brakes, of course. You can flip end over end, and that is not pretty, let me tell you. I've done it a few times. Alright, there we go. Welcome back to Vela La Vela Island, and in particular, Barakoma Airbase. Let's go ahead and taxi our way in. And it's going to be a pretty long haul, so we'll probably cut to the outside view as we're doing this. But basically, just keep your throttle idle. We should have enough momentum going to do this, so let's go ahead and get our flaps up. I'm actually going to turn on the landing lights now. Yeah, I know I should have done that before, but we're going to do it now. And one more thing I want to show you, these cockpit lights, so let's turn those on since it's getting a little dark in here. Got to kind of make it quick. So there's 5 of these puppies, and the lights are pretty much all over the cockpit. And then we flip the switch, and voila! Look at that. Alright, am I still on the runway? Yes, it appears that I am. Okay, let's go to the outside view as we taxi our way in. There we go, right about there. All right, that will do it for us. So I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed this little flight. Just a reminder, this is the Milviz Fg1d Corsair. It is basically Goodyear's version of the chance-fought F4U Corsair, which was famous in World War II for downing quite a great many Japanese aircraft. This particular livery is one of the few liveries that you get that represent VMF 214, aka the Black Sheep Squadron, led by Major Gregory Boyington, call sign Pappy because he was the oldest of the group at the time that it was formed. And an interesting little side note about the Black Sheep Squadron, they were originally supposed to be called Boyington's Bastards. Yeah, you know how censorship was back in those days? You really couldn't say that on the radio. So that's how they ended up getting the name the Black Sheep Squadron. All right, but that will just about do it for me. So we'll go ahead and get this bird off. All right, there we go. I should have folded the wings because you can't do that with the engine off. You kind of need to have the engine on to do that. But I think we should be good to go. So as I'm powering everything down, I do want to thank you as always for watching. This has been BelGeode. I have been flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And as I mentioned before, this is Milviz's version of the Corsair, the venerable Corsair, my absolute favorite bird from World War II. The scenery that we've been on is a freeware. It can be found on flightsim.to. Again, the name of the person who developed this scenery should be showing on your screen right now. Be sure to give them a very good rating because they did a really good job. Like I said, the only areas of improvement that I could see, maybe if they can get some like static Corsairs and maybe some static people in World War II garb to throw around the area, that would be pretty cool. But for freeware, I'm not going to complain at all. It kind of does feel like the real place. All right, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please feel free to give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. I have been BelGeode. This has been Microsoft Flight Simulator. And from beautiful Vella La Vella Island in World War II, I bid you all ciao.